Hello and welcome to Split Informed and Split Smart. I'm your host, Carl Roberts, and excited to be here for our show on the WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. It is a live internet TV, so look forward to sharing some good conversation with you today. The intention behind the Split Informed and Split Smart is to help all couples, amicable, sometimes often hostile, to more easily reach positive, equitable, and peaceful agreements in their divorce. It's my belief that most everyone in their right mind, they want peace, love, and equality in their post-life divorce. Even if they aren't in their right mind, even if they don't know it, somewhere deep down, they still want peace, love, and equality. SplitSmart was founded with the audacious goal of trying to prevent anyone going through divorce, regardless of emotional state or personality disorder, of denying peace, love, and equality to the other or to their children. Granted, that's much easier said than done, but therein lies our goal and mission. We know that the single difference between a good divorce and a bad divorce is simply the presence of a bad actor. Bad actors can be one or both, man or woman, lawyer or litigant. And usually bad actors are good people who have gotten tripped up by their emotions, bad advice from friends, family, or a lawyer. And more often than most people realize, a personality disorder of being a narcissist or having a borderline personality disorder. Our topic today is countering conflict, how to help yourself and your kids through divorce. My guest is Christina McGhee. Christina is a MSW, is an internationally recognized divorce parenting expert, speaker, and author who has spent most of her career educating parents and professionals on how to minimize the impact of divorce on our children. Christina, thanks so much for joining us, and I know that the introduction doesn't do you justice, and so tell our audience a little bit more about you.
Okay. Well, first, thank you for the opportunity to be here and to share information with your listeners. It's such an important topic and one that I am certainly very passionate about. So I'm someone who's been coaching and educating separating parents for probably the better part of 20 years. And it's certainly my journey into this work wasn't definitely by design. Like lots of people in this space, I had one of those situations where the personal and the professional collided. I married someone who had children. And so when I said I did in the parenting department, instantly became a bonus mom to two very young children. And even though I grew up in a divorced family myself, I never really paid attention to the impact that it had had on my life until becoming a bonus mom. And I didn't necessarily know what I was supposed to do, but I was pretty clear about what I didn't want to do. And so I began kind of researching and gaining information on how can we help kids, how can we make this work for them, right? And so that's where my journey began and has certainly been a very interesting ride from there. So I spend a lot of time talking directly with parents, one-on-one coaching them. I spend a lot of time talking about high conflict situations, alienation, when kids, when families hit a bump in the road. Because more often than not, once the ink dries on the decree, then real life kicks in, the wheels come off, and people are scrambling. They don't know what to do. I also spend a good bit of my time working on other projects like the documentary Split. I've written a book, and I also train professionals, family law professionals, whether they're mediators, collaborative lawyers, or family lawyers, on how to approach this process from a child-centered perspective.
And I've watched Split, and I think that's excellent. And you did that kind of in collaboration with who? Who was your?
Ellen Bruno is the creator and the producer of Split, and she is a dear friend and a colleague of mine who has been a documentarian for a filmmaker for a very long time. And when she split from her children's father, she started looking for resources where kids were talking to kids, and she didn't come across anything. And so she set about to make a film that really represented the children's voice and their perspective, and that's what Split is. It's a documentary for parents and their children that shares the stories of 12 really amazing kids who have gone through family breakup. Their parents split up, and they share their insights and their stories. And it is truly a really remarkable film that kind of pulls back the curtain on what this experience really feels like for kids.
And if I understood, it's being recommended in courts in different states.
So one of the things that we hadn't expected is that when Ellen created this film, it was the intention of, sharing children's perspectives. But what we found very quickly is that it was really embraced by the professional community. And there are some court systems that will require parents to watch it, before they proceed. There are family lawyers that are using it in their work, mediators with parents. Some will refer to it as like homework before they have a session or before they have a meeting, or use sections of it, but it really has made a very profound impact. And I think one of the reasons is that it allows parents to really hear from kids that are like their own, but not their own. Because even no matter how much you love your kids, no matter how well-intentioned you are, there are a lot of things that go on in the background for kids in terms of stressors, of worries, of fears, of anxiety that just really don't make it on our parenting radar. And Split is an opportunity to kind of open parents' hearts and minds to what are some of the things that kids are thinking and feeling.
Yeah, and when I watched it, again, one of the things that parents good or loving and amicable, not necessarily amicable or even hostile. Oftentimes when they start into the whole divorce process and start thinking about custody and child support, quite often our emotions kind of, or the front, or kind of got their foot on the pedal. And they're really driving much of our perception. And, it's more, I believe from the standpoint that as you start those custody and child support conversations, people are more self-centered. They're more emotionally kind of caught up into it. And they think they're thinking about the children, but really kind of is more foremost for, they got their self in mind, or and if it's less than amicable or hostile, they're, kind of got the future ex on their mind. And
well, I have a little bit of a different perspective in that regard, because I believe that most parents are really trying to do the very best that they can for their kids, and they want to, but we've got a couple things working against us. One is when emotions kick in and they're strong, parents aren't thinking in a logical and rational way. Emotion is driving the train, right? And so that part of our brain that's good at problem solving, that's being objective, that's rational, that's grounded, is pretty much shut down, right? And we also have this dynamic where parents are seeing the very worst in each other instead of the very best. And so you have all these dynamics that are coming together. In addition to, I think, a lot of kids, when parents split up, they worry. Are you going to, if you've stopped loving each other, does that mean someday you're going to stop loving me? And I think parents also have that same fear. Like, is this process going to damage my relationship with the kids? And they become very protective of that, and they don't want to lose that point of influence or being engaged in their kids' lives. And so all of these dynamics are kind of coming together and creating what you would call a perfect storm. And in the early stages, I think a lot of divorces look like they're high conflict, when a lot of it may be that we're just not listening to each other, we're not understanding each other, and we're operating out of that place of high fear and high emotion. And when parents can get the support they need to get some clarity, to kind of step out of that, then they can make better choices moving forward.
Yeah, I often say in our previous conversations, and I appreciated kind of adding fear to the list of why there's conflict, and I think that is underlying for most. Fears that underlying most. Again, you're worried about your relationship with your children. You're worried how long you're going, if you're going to be able to see them. Where are you going to be, next week, next month, next year, 5 years, 10 years. And I mean, we all became parents because we wanted to be parents. I mean, this kind of, my personal, dream was to be a good dad.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think that's not emphasized enough, that that's a root cause of a lot of the conflict, protecting, that relationship. And I do think that there are plenty who spin that fear, or turn that fear into some more aggressive action. And that's where some of the conflict comes from, because they're trying to get more time, or they're trying to get more child support, or they're trying to, kind of have their emotional justice from the other. And I think that's where, the fear is exacerbated or turned into aggressive action by some parents.
Right. Well, I also think that the system we have set up for going through this process, when parents get thrown into the court system, that certainly doesn't help in that regard, because it is an adversarial system, right? That really uses a lot of language that can be interpreted as winner, loser, good parent, bad parent, primary parent, not primary parent, and we also, I think parents get very caught up in this idea of keeping things fair. And I tell people, stop using the F word. Fair is not something that needs to be in your vocabulary as you're going through this process, because we're focused in on thinking what's fair for us as parents, but what's fair for parents doesn't always feel so great for kids. And parents don't often realize the impact that some of their decisions and the way they're approaching this process influence their children, because when parents are really focused in on how time is being spent and keeping it fair and talking about my time and your time and calculating it down to the minutes and hours, it tends to increase children's anxiety, because children are wired to want to keep things very fair. And it's interesting, this Project Split that we were just talking about, Ellen has gone back and re-interviewed all the kids from the original film and is creating a sequel. And she talked with these children 6-7 years down the road. And I've been working as a subject matter consultant with the project. And so I've seen some of the early footage and some of the interviews. And it's fascinating how that issue of staying fair, keeping things even between parents, is still a theme that's playing out in these children's lives. Like, they're still worried about it. And I can tell you that it carries over well into adulthood. I mean, this is a legacy that keeps living on. So parents really need to be very sensitive to how they're talking about this and how they're dealing with this issue.
Yeah, so certainly the inspiration of SplitSmart came from my own unfortunate journey. And, as I look for, and with one of my primary goals of just trying to keep children out of the middle of that divorce conflict. And, so in that, I've developed a variety of different philosophies and beliefs. And amongst that is that the amicable parents, or mature parents, are parents who can put their feelings aside and their emotions aside and not get tripped up by the system. When they get tripped up by the system, the conflict is about fear, but it's also about money, control, and oftentimes just hatred. And so in that, but the people who can control their emotions, kind of keep the eye on the ball. I mean, they're making two incredibly important decisions when they kind of get to that point. And they may not necessarily know that they're making the decision, but the first decision that they're making is they're separating time and money, custody and child support, to be able to solve both more easily. I'm an advocate for 50-50 parenting, but even in the most loving households, that's not practical or even desired. I mean, it's not what's best for the kid. And the second point that what's most important about the scheduling is that there's no conflict. And in my perspective, just conflict, and if you can remove conflict, then everybody kind of becomes more respectful of one another. We become a more accommodating to one another, and then life changes 50 times post divorce. So again, just having those no conflict agreements. The second most important thing that their decision that they're making is that they're distinguishing between adult benefit of money and child benefit of money. And so just to avoid the vast amount of conflict in that arena, is because most all of us want to, support our children to the best of our abilities in the manner that we however we think is best. But really, not a single one of us, but when it becomes tainted with, supporting the ex through child support, that's where a lot of the conflict comes from. And so just distinguishing between, child benefit and adult benefit, I think is an incredible value for those parents making these decisions.
Right. I think the starting point for a lot of those conversations needs to be the realization that while your relationship has changed, your children's needs have not. And so asking parents to really think about what are all the things that kids need from a family? What did they need before the divorce? Because all those needs are going to continue after the marriage ends. And so how, as parents, can we move forward in providing for our children and making sure that they have the childhood that they deserve, right? And that means providing for them financially, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and really honing in on where is their common ground. Let's start there and then move out from there. I don't think that the conflict is necessarily a bad thing. It's because it's going to be there. I mean, there's a reason you're getting divorced, right? But it's how you respond to the conflict. Like, are you in this trap of being reactive with each other where it's just kind of knee-jerk reaction after knee-jerk reaction? Or are you approaching it from a more thoughtful place? Are you responding? Are you allowing different to be different? Are you embracing the conflict and saying, okay, so here's where we don't agree. Now, what are we going to do about it? And really realizing that there are lots of different perceptions and that, I don't have to be wrong for you to be right. We can each see things in a different way, but have this kind of overarching agreement that what we really want more than anything is for our kids to be happy, well-adjusted, resilient, secure, and safe.
Yeah, I believe, that every parent's goal should be, to be able to have their children thrive in the love and support of both parents, and to be able to have healthy relationships. And that does not necessarily mean 50-50 time. It just means that, we need to have healthy relationships, whatever that time is, because again, people travel, work, school, jobs, everything kind of gets in the way of when we start to try to quantify time as fair, right? And so as we move away from time as fair and we focus on the quality of that time, and we don't want to hinder somebody's ability to really kind of, hinder somebody's ability to have 50-50, but at the same time, we need to, remove the fear, remove the conflict, remove everything else, control of, what that really kind of means.
But I think the other piece of that, when we're talking about time, is that, we need to look at what do kids need? Like, what are our children's needs? That really needs to be the starting point. And so how are we as parents going to meet that? And even if you came up with the most perfect timeshare arrangement, the truth is that what's working today may not work tomorrow because kids' needs are going to change over time. They're going to get older. The needs of a 15-year-old are not going to be the same as the needs of a 5-year-old. And so what you worked out when they're young may not be workable when they're older, and kids may be drawn or need the support of a parent developmentally at different points in their life. And so when you can be open to building in some flexibility and really focusing on what's really going to help our kids and allow us each to maintain a quality relationship. I also really encourage parents to think about using a two-home concept, which means regardless of how time is spent, children feel a sense of belonging and connectedness in each household. Like, we are underscoring that belief that you are going to continue to share a life with each parent. And research actually shows that when there is an equitable division of time, right, and kids are able to maintain those warm, nurturing relationships with each parent, that they're going to fare far better. And actually, the benefits of them having those strong relationships with each parent even trumps conflict. So even if parents aren't getting along, but kids are able to have those relationships, and those foundations are secure for them, they're still going to do okay.
Christina, let's come back to that point because we need to take a quick break. I am Carl Roberts, host of Split Informed and Split Smart with my guest, Christina McGhee. We're talking about countering conflict, how to help yourself and your kids through divorce. You can find Christina at divorceandchildren.com. With that said, we will be right back after a short break. All right, we're back. Welcome back to Split Informed and Split Smart. I'm Carl Roberts with our guest today, Christina McGhee, an internationally recognized divorce parenting expert, speaker, and author, filmmaker. Can I put your filmmaker in there as well?
I don't know about that.
Well, so certainly excited. We're having a great conversation with Christina. But I do want to go back to the one point. So again, you're talking about making the parenting plans and schedules really kind of focus on, the best interest of the child type thing. I mean, you didn't use that phrase, but that's the catchphrase out there in the marketplace, right?
Yeah, it is.
And so how, again, good, well-meaning parents are kind of, use that, I call it a false banner of, best interest of the child to try to get what they want or what they think they should have. And so they kind of misconstrue, misrepresent what's the best interest of the child to kind of, again, in the higher conflict ways, kind of to try to tear down the other person and those type of things. So getting divorced, I've heard you say, and again, kind of getting divorced doesn't make you a bad parent, and so, and where I'm more coming from is, again, so trying to protect individuals from that bad actor, what that bad actor it is. I mean, so you kind of touched on it earlier, don't reply.
You don't want to be reactive. You want to respond, right?
Yeah, be thoughtful, respond. But let's take us down that track again. So we got a bad actor on the other side, but again, how can we best help ourselves and our kids through that time?
Right. Well, I think, first of all, one of the things that we need to do for ourselves is do our very best to avoid making assumptions about the other parent. So I think when we get into labeling the other parent as, wrong or bad or vindictive, or, what we all tell ourselves stories, right, about why things are happening the way that they do. And it's very easy to get sucked into this loop of the lens that we're looking at each other through is always through the worst possible perspective. And that's when we get judgmental, we make assumptions, we put a negative spin on things, we're suspicious. And so
we're reactive, we're fearful, we're all that fun stuff.
Exactly. And so I encourage parents to get real clear about what are their values, what are their co-parenting values, how do they want to show up in this process, regardless of what the other parent does or doesn't do. Who do you want to be? And get connected to that and operate out of those values. So one dynamic that happens a lot when you have a high conflict parent is that it's kind of one of those situations where they're nasty one day and nice the next. And so you never know which one's going to show up. Like, is it going to be the parent that's going to be agreeable and accommodating, or is it going to be the person that's going to be nasty and not talk to you anymore? And wow, how confusing that is for kids, right? So I tell parents to be consistent in their communication and consistent in how they engage. Don't operate out of how the other parent is behaving, but operate out of what are your co-parenting values and stay consistent with that. And so that takes some of that dynamic out of there. And I think the other thing that's really important is that if you want to get in that space where you can connect with being objective and non-judgmental, you're going to have somebody in your corner that's supporting you and helping you process all of this. Like, support and good information in the early stages is really the defining difference between parents who just get through this and parents who get through this well. So that could be a coach like myself. It could be a close friend who's objective and not going to add fuel to the fire, right? So you need to choose your support people carefully. Right, it does. It could be a support group. It could be a book that gives you good information. It could be an online forum of like-minded parents. But you need to get connected to support, because I tell people quite often it's hard to see the picture when you're in the frame. And so you need somebody standing outside of the frame of your life that can kind of give you that perspective, somebody who's not connected to the situation emotionally, because there may be some things that you're missing.
You got a friend, and prefer more of a therapist type things, because I do think that friends can so easily kind of add that fuel to the fire, and I don't want, and it drives me nuts oftentimes. Again, even lawyers who kind of talk about entitled, or this is what you should do, and this what this is we'll make this the best interest of the child. But yeah, so I do kind of where we are not tightly aligned is where, because there are. It's not, and I don't think it's so much as labeling the other. I mean, you're on the receiving end of a lot of crap, and so again, so in those states, again, it's a lot of, and that emphasizes when you're on the receiving end of a lot of crap, it's hard. There is just no way to say, but it's hard, and it emphasizes even the more need for coaches, people in your corner, and again, trying to come out of your own space, be thoughtfully responsive, and again, doing your best to, keep those thoughts, really what's best for the child, and then hopefully, then it's some of the fire coming your way can slowly subside. I mean.
Right. And no, you make a really good point. And that is, it's so much easier said than done, right? It's great to say, oh, well, you shouldn't contribute to the conflict and you should have a level head and you shouldn't be reactive. But wow, that's a really tall order. And no matter how much you love your kids, this idea that because, that's what I should be doing, I should just do it. It's going to be easy, like a light switch. I'm just going to flip it on, and happen that way. And so you really need to be proactive. And I will say that not all situations are created equal, right? So there is a broad spectrum from parents that, may not agree on everything, but they can work it out, or they can talk with a mediator or a neutral professional and kind of come to an agreement, and things get better over time, to those situations that fall at the other end of the spectrum, where you really truly may have someone who is just extremely bitter, and whether it's a mental health issue or a personality disorder, they're just absolutely in it for the fight, right? Yeah. And I have a lot of clients like that. I want those parents in those situations to hear quite clearly, while you can't change what the other parent says or does, or the fact that you've got a high conflict co-parent, you do have control over how you respond. You do have control over how you process it, the thoughts that you feed yourself about it, how much energy you dedicate to the drama. And kids will still fare so much better if one parent gets it together than if nobody gets it together. Right. So you can make a big difference. If kids have that one stable, nurturing, supportive person in their lives that's not, doing their best not to contribute to the conflict, they're going to do okay. So really stay focused on that. But it requires you thinking through, how are you going to stay in that space? How are you going to avoid being reactive? How are you going to get that perspective and support? And it requires getting good information about dealing with a high conflict parent, dealing with alienation. And I will say that more often than not, one of the pitfalls I see lots of parents fall into is they wait. They wait to get the information, they wait to get the support, and they end up making the situation unintentionally much worse than if they'd had some information and some support on the front end. They could have approached the situation differently.
Yeah, and I do think that one of the worst things a parent can do is really just go, not have any discussion, not do any of this research, not having that discussion with the other parent, not, regardless of what the feelings are, not doing all this stuff, and then just right out of the gate, lawyering up. And then those situations, again, you got the false allegations, and you get the whole wealth of things that happen when people say, I'm going to do this, without that mediator, without that coach, without that conversation, in a child-centered way. Mm-hmm. But when one just kind of comes out of the gate, calls, and again, it's I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But the whole false allegations is oftentimes a strategy in divorce court and for custody, and it's just couldn't be more repugnant than just the actual incidents of domestic violence. So
well, and you may be in a situation where you don't have any choice, right? You have a parent on the other side who is committed to playing this out in court. They want their day, or they're just everything results in litigation, right? And that may not be something that you can change or influence. You may have to have a lawyer, to protect yourself in those circumstances. But again, how you approach it, there's a lot of options. You still can minimize contributing to it, and approach it in a way where it doesn't escalate as quickly or as much, right? You can't change the fact that you're there, but you can change how you approach it. And while you may need to have a family lawyer to represent your interest while you're going through that, you can also have other allied professionals like the coaches, or a therapist that helps you process your feelings around all this and stay really focused on the kids. So there are still options, even though you may have to go to court. There's still options.
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt. I mean, it is about thoughtfully responding and thoughtfully putting your perspective in for the child. And it's not only about that. I mean, in getting people to think past the current fight and think about tomorrow. Really tomorrow, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. I mean, we all want, deep down, whether we know it or not, whether we're in the right mind or not, we all want peace, love, and equality in our lives. And I just want to again kind of where we kind of get different in the languages again, recognizing how do we deal with that? What are the mechanisms? What are the processes to kind of, we're thoughtful in our response, but how do we protect, mitigate a lot of that fire that's coming your way? And so it's a hard thing.
Yes, it is.
And having that, and again, my vernacular, that bad actor take account, having them have accountability in this process, having them, again, you're very smart about the whole thoughtful response perspective, but how do we kind of get some accountability on that bad actor side? And that's what I wrestle with, and that's literally what large part.
And that's hard. And I suggest that parents not hang their hat on the accountability, because you might not ever get it.
Point well.
I think that the more important point is how much of your energy do you want to give to this, and how much focus are you willing to place on your kids? And one of the most profound things that I ever heard was a story about a parent who was talking with, their counselor about their situation. They were in a high conflict divorce, lots of litigation. And the parent said, I don't know what I can do to make things better with the other parent, but I certainly know what I can do to make them worse. And I think it's really important for us to remember as parents that at any given point in time, you always have the ability to make this situation so much worse for your kids. So what can you do, right? When we talk about really embracing and getting thoughtful and responding rather than reacting, is taking a step back and asking ourselves, okay, so how could I make this worse? How could I make it better? How will this choice impact my kids? How much will this matter to me 6 months from now, a year from now? Like, you want to pick and choose what's worth going to the mat, because there are a lot of things that in the grand scheme of things, you can just kind of take a step back. And a lot of that requires us changing the context for how we're viewing it, right? And so
the societal paradigm is what I call it.
The societal paradigm? I'm not sure I understand.
Well, so one of those paradigms is just it's going to be a battle. It's going to be a fight. So let's lawyer up and let's start, let's get this going. And so if we can get people in the societal paradigm, get more people to stop, think, take a breath, even these people who are really wound up and about to do something nasty, stop, think, okay, what your choice here is peace or conflict. Your choice is a divorce and that costs you $2,000 versus $300,000. And it is almost just as black and white as that. If you obviously everybody in their right mind and even those in their wrong mind think that they want peace. I mean, we all want peace instead of conflict. But so then we got to make decisions to support that path. Again, we may or may not have the ability to affect the other, but we know we want peace in this process. We know we don't want to spend, their college tuitions on the process, and we know we want peace, love, and equality post divorce. But so how do we get there? And
I think we have to realize, though, so again, I have a little bit of a different take on the wanting peace, because I think there are some individuals that don't have that level of awareness, and they're not thinking about it necessarily in those terms, right? So they're really stuck in that cycle of blaming, and pointing the finger at the other parent. They're the reason.
And attacking.
Yes, exactly. And the other piece of that is that there is this dynamic that I refer to as negative intimacy. And so in the beginnings of a relationship, we're in love with each other, we want to be together, and we have this really powerful, intoxicating connection, right? And when the relationship starts unraveling and we emotionally distance ourselves, what can happen is all that energy that we put into loving each other transforms into not passionately loving each other, but passionately hating each other. And the conflict becomes the point of connection. And this can go both ways, where both parents have an investment, or it can go one way. You have one parent that is using the conflict to maintain that connection to that parent. And so it all becomes about the fight. So it's really important for parents to think about, when they're dealing with a high conflict co-parent, what's the payoff? Sometimes it's the need for control. Sometimes it's, the need to feel right or vindicated, to blame, to punish, to stay connected, figuring out what's the payoff. And then realize that this situation is a lot like playing tug of war. It's really hard to play tug of war when somebody drops the rope. And I work with parents on learning how do you drop the rope? How do you just not show up for that? You don't have to show up for every fight you're invited to. And that's part of that, getting the perspective and really being thoughtful in your response. And there are a lot of strategies and ways that you can offset and kind of help yourself get into that space. Like, for example, let's say you get an angry email from the other parent, and it's just riddled with all of this, hashing through the past, and you did this and you did that. I recommend, one of the strategies is print a copy of it and take a red pen and redline it, cross out everything that doesn't have anything to do with the kids, right? And once you've done that, take a look at it and then respond to what's left. Instead of trying to get into this, situation of defending and, replying back to every accusation to assert your perspective, it's not going to help you. It's just going to keep the game going. It's going to keep the connection going.
Christina, I love talking to you. And we could go on for hours, not days. There's so much here. But I really do just appreciate getting to know you a little bit and your perspective and your different slant on my perspective. I really do love that about you. Christina, tell people how they can get in touch with you.
Sure. You can find me at divorceandchildren.com. That's divorceandchildren.com. Got a lot of information, articles, and offers there for parents. If you're interested in coaching, you can find out a little bit more about how I work with parents. And I do have an offer for parents who maybe haven't worked with a coach before or interested in finding out who I am. I do a free 30-minute kind of complimentary call. So, because I really believe that, it's hard to know if you want to work with somebody if you haven't talked to them. So I give parents an opportunity to really kind of find out more about me and what I do and get some insight. So if anybody's interested in, learning a little more, you can find me there.
And they can also get a free viewing of Split. Is that right, from your website?
There's a trailer, so you can see a trailer of Split. Okay. You can find out some information about it. Split is something that if you're interested, you can go to splitfilm.org and you can stream the film online for, under $6. So it's good for 72 hours. And I just want to add to that any parent that's interested in watching Split, it's really important that you preview it first. You watch it first before showing it to your kids, because even though it's an extraordinary film, not every resource is a fit for every family. And so you need to assess the emotional dynamics. The other thing is that sometimes watching Split is harder for parents than it is for kids. There are things these kids share that just hit us so deeply. And you want to be able to responsibly manage your emotions when you watch it with your kids. So you need to take a look at it, process it for yourself emotionally, figure out if it's a fit for your kids, and then make a decision about whether or not you want to share it.
And hopefully that the other parent will watch it as well.
Yeah, and I would definitely say, let the other parent know. If you make a decision to show it to the kids, share it with your co-parent so that they have an opportunity to watch it with kids, or at the very least, know about it if the kids refer to it.
Yeah. Well, very good. Well, Christine, I don't want to wrap up, but we got to. Anyway, this has been Christina McGhee discussing how to help countering conflict, how to help yourself and kids through divorce. Please join us on Tuesday, August 24th at 11 a.m. Eastern for our next show with guest Tracy M. Moore, a Georgia divorce lawyer and founder of the Now International Amicable Divorce Network. Split Informed and Split Smart. Bye-bye.